Morning guys, Rab here for another tournament vlog. I know you love them, I love making them when I remember to film. Now today's tournament is in a little known place in Scotland called Paisley or Paisley, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. If you haven't heard of it, it's a small town just outside of Glasgow, barely a town. It's like a village or a jumped up hamlet. It's like a large hamlet just outside of Glasgow. It's not in the borders of Glasgow, it's its own little place.
Next train at platform 1 will be now 8:43, service to Glasgow Central, calling out Kilsmilly and Glasgow Central. This train is formed of 4 carriages.
That's not my train, but I can get it, so I'm going to get it. Small tournament, 4 games, escalation event, so 2 games at 350 points and 2 games at 550 points. Now, the mystery of this tournament, and some of you might have guessed it, because it's probably in the thumbnail or the title of the video, or I've told you if I know you personally, or if you're really eagle-eyed you might have noticed, I don't have an army. The TO of the event, Fraser, who you maybe know from previous videos, or you might probably know him personally as well if you know me, has kindly donated me a list and an army for today. So I don't know what it is until I get to Call Me Crazy in Paisley, where the tournament is today. So I'm going to get there, I'm going to find out what my army is, I'm going to quickly learn and write down the rules, and then I'm going to play 4 games though and see how I do. This will be a test of my memory and general knowledge of MESBG. If I do well at this event, I think I might stop picking one army and just rely on you guys more. I thought it's a good idea for content. If you like this idea, get used to it, because I've already planned to do it a couple of times next year with some other people. We'll swap lists, we'll just turn up and give each other armies just for a bit of a laugh, just to make it fun. You know, it's almost Christmas. It's probably Christmas by the time this comes out actually. Sorry, somebody's walked past me there. But yeah, that's today's plan. So whilst Fraser is incredibly busy last minute in it as usual, Cammy, sorry mate, I've been given an option of 2 armies, so I need to give a good or evil roll. Is it a good or evil army, or is it just... So on the last remaining Raptastic dice, because I give them all away. Oh, it's a 6, it's cocked.
Cocked, re-roll it.
It's a 3.
It's evil.
I know, but I can't have too much at once.
You have the Corsairs of Umbar.
I better go and learn the rules then.
Year 3434 of the Second Age. Here follows.
Game 1 was Contest of Champions against Douglas. Now, I like Contest of Champions, even though I very frequently call it Conquest of Champions. This scenario generally is a slobber knocker. Both your leaders start 3 inches away from the middle of the board, and you're awarded points for leader melee kills. So it's generally just a straight up fight. I think having this scenario as game 1 at 350 points greatly influenced a lot of lists, because a lot of people saw this and said, I need to get melee leader kills, so I need to bring the killiest leader I can at 350 points. And quite rightly, I think if I had to pick more army for this, I'd maybe have taken Shagrat, maybe Aragorn with Elendil, the sword, not the person. Can't just swing his great grandfather around. Yeah, so rewards just getting stuck right into it and getting over with. So those points outside of your leader don't really matter. So yeah, I would have spent 350 points on a single unit for this if I could. But going into this scenario, the 2 people I didn't want to come up against were Azog or Bolg. And right on schedule, here's Bolg. I actually won priority, charged into him, decided not to waste Dalamir's smoke bombs because he's a hero, he could just spend a point of will. Instead, threw a throwing knife, which did nothing, and then we got into combat. The rest of the units just moved in to surround the enemy, I outnumbered him significantly because these models are very cheap. One very cool thing as well is that almost every single unit has a throwing dagger. Unfortunately, I don't think I got a single kill in game 1 with them. Into the combats, and Bolg won the fight against Dalamir but was unable to kill him, meaning that I would actually have another opportunity to win this game. It wouldn't be over in round 1. The other fights went pretty evenly over the rest of the round, with us both picking up some kills. I was feeling quietly confident because I had a lot more units, and my units get +1 to wound when they trap a model. That's their army bonus, so I was hoping that I could flank Bolg and pin him between a number of my units, win a combat, which was going to be difficult with the fight value, and then maybe just kill him outright. Dalamir also has Bane of Kings, allowing him to reroll all failed wound rolls, so that could potentially be my saving grace. He just had to survive another couple of rounds. Unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. I lost priority in this round. I called the move with Dalamir to try and correct that, but Bolg has Master of Battle, so he just copied and he won the roll off, charging straight into Dalamir and eventually chewing him up. Unfortunately, this pretty much guaranteed that I couldn't win the game because most of the points rely on your leader scoring kills, and Dalamir had 0 before he died. The rest of the game was incredibly fun. It was very killy. Both our armies were just chopping through each other. Bolg ended the game on 10 kills, I'm sure, which meant that he would have had Mighty Hero if there was another turn, but on the last turn of the game we both 25%ed each other with the last kill each, meaning the game would end and I would score 1 victory point for breaking my opponent, so it was an 11-1 victory to Douglas as opposed to the 12-0 which he probably should have had. But yeah, great fun game, good introduction to the Corsairs and how much fun throwing weapons on almost every model are. Now, as you can tell by the highlights there, the game was over pretty quickly, so it was a long wait until game 2, but it finally arrived and we were playing Seize the Prize and I was playing Alex. Now, Alex has featured on the channel a number of times because I think he's won best painted at almost every competition I've went to, and I think he's been in one tournament vlog as well. I'm sure I've played against him. We couldn't remember. I probably could go and look, but I can't be arsed. Yeah, I went and double checked. I can't find footage, but I'm sure we played against each other. Sorry, Alex. Anyway, Seize the Prize. There's an artifact buried right in the middle of the table. You have to get to it. Attempt to dig it when you're in base contact with a infantry model. On a 4-up, you pick it up and then you have to take it off your opponent's side of the board rather than, just flying up, picking it up and flying it back. Although the artifact's in the middle of the table, so it's just as easy to fly it off the other end than it is to... This is going on too long. Seize the Prize. Now, Alex brought along his incredibly painted Bjornings from the Legendary Legion, so this was going to be a tough fight. I would have a serious advantage on the numbers, but not anywhere else. These guys are strong, high defense, and they have 2 wounds each at least. And Bjorn, it's just a monster. Well, he's a bear, but he's a monster, and would easily chew through my troops, so I had to avoid him if possible, maybe tag him with one model to stop him chewing through my list, and hopefully just go and get that artifact as soon as possible. We both made our way towards the middle of the table as fast as possible. Now, I only had 3 might on the table and I'm pretty sure Alex has the same on Bjorn, so neither of us were in a rush to call moves or march this early in the game before a single fight had happened. So luckily, I got to the objective first, but I was unable to pick it up, giving Alex an opportunity to take it out from underneath my nose. I then threw all of my throwing daggers, which was 7 at the time, straight at Beorn with a couple of in the ways to try and slow him down, maybe put a wound on him, anything I could do to get rid of him because he was going to be the big problem in this army. Unfortunately, they all bounced off him. In the next turn, I lost priority, called the move with Dalamir to try and prevent Beorn from smashing into my ranks, but then lost the roll off. With Dalamir only having 2 points of might, it was a risky strategy, but I really can't take a charge from a unit like Beorn against my very squishy models. But unfortunately I did. I feel like I'm saying unfortunately quite a lot. I should have a counter for that. To make things worse for me, after charging my battle lines, Alex then picked up the artifact, meaning it would be a lot more difficult for me to win this game because I'd have to kill the model with the artifact and then escape from the huge scary bear that would be chasing me down. In the resulting fight phase, Dalamir managed to put a wound on a Bjorning model, and that was pretty much the highlight of the game, maybe. It was pretty bad. With the higher fight value for my opponent anyway, all he had to do was roll a 6 and there was nothing I could do to counter that. Dalamir was the only one of my models that could tie fight value with his regular troops, so I was in a lot of trouble. And Alex rolled a lot of 6s this game, so it was just rolling to wound almost every turn. Not only that, but my troops are all, and my leader, sorry, is defense 4. So it was very easy for him to wound my models once he'd rolled his 6s, and he massacred me. Lamentably, yes, I used a thesaurus. I lost the next priority, meaning that I was unable to stop Alex charging Beorn into Dalamir. This is the one thing we didn't want to happen. At this point I was still outnumbering my opponent, barely, so I decided to get as many units as possible into combat to up my chances to get a wound or 2 on some of these Bjornings. Going into the fight phase with Beorn on the charge into defense 4 Dalamir, the entire round went about as well as you can imagine.
What ensued was one of the most spectacular ass whoopings ever witnessed in the Atlantic Northeast. Viewer discretion is advised.
7, 8 wounds.
Yes, you heard that right. Beorn inflicted a staggering 8 wounds on Dalamir in a single turn. You're not surviving that. Now, after that, the rest of the game was a bogey. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I'd remembered that I had Bane of Kings. Could I have killed that Bjorning? Could I have got Dalamir into combat with the one beside him that had the artifact and perhaps killed them and then taken the artifact for himself and snuck away? Who knows? But the rest of the game, like I said, went exactly as you imagined. The Bjornings chopped through the rest of my troops. The standout though was the one little Corsair who survived 3 rounds of combat with Beorn before sadly perishing. What a trooper. Going into game 3, it would be domination. Not only that, it would be the first of the last 2 games, played at 550 points. Going up to 550 points, I now had 43 models. I had 8 arbalisters, which are just crossbows, and I had an extra hero, Delgamar, so I was quite happy with my numbers. Domination is another objective based game. You have a central objective and then you and your opponent both place down another objective, and you have to be holding them at the end of the game. I was liking the look of this because I hugely outnumbered my opponent, who started the game with 1 model. My opponent was Cami from Paints on a 4-Up, a good friend of the channel, and he'd brought along his Champions of Erebor chariot, which had Balin, Dwalin, Keely and Feely with a couple of bows. So this is going to be a fun game. I'd never played against the chariot before, and I hugely respect Cammy for bringing this model just for fun. He was like 50 points under his total, but he didn't bring any extra troops. He's like, nope, I'm bringing the chariot, I'm going to have a laugh. So huge respect to him for doing that, because that's what it's all about, having a bit of fun. Now, he told me the rules for the chariot, and one of them is that the units cannot come out of the chariot, and the chariot also cannot go over any terrain. So, needing to win the game, I put both of my objectives on terrain, meaning that there was a huge chance straight away that he couldn't win the game unless I destroyed the chariot, which is easier said than done. Now, the chariot is capable of mowing down troops. It moves 8 inches, but it can move 4 and rotate 45. It's got some very strange rules. Look them up rather than have me explain them to them, because I didn't get much of it. It can move 8 inches, and it moves through units. So when it comes into base contact with one of your units, it inflicts 3 strength 6 hits on them. If the unit survives, the chariot stops there, and it's in combat with that unit that it survived. If they die, it just keeps on moving until it runs out of inches. Kinda like me. Now, my original plan was to prioritise winning priority and charge the chariot with as many units as possible. This would mean that it wasn't able to run straight over my army and just wipe out my troops. It also meant that I could try and inflict as many wounds as possible with my 43 units. The chariot itself only had 5 wounds, I believe. Pretty high defense though, and my guys weren't the strongest, so that could be problematic. Another big challenge was that the chariot cannot be classified as trapped, meaning I wouldn't get my +1 to wound it. So I was up against it. I managed to inflict an early wound on the chariot and also on Keeley with a thrown weapon, which blew me away, to be honest, because they had been almost useless up until now. I was targeting Keeley and Feely because I knew that they were significantly weaker than Balin and Dwalin, especially in the Fate department, so I thought if I killed them first, things would be a lot easier for me. Lamentably, yes, I'm using the Thesaurus again, I couldn't win the priority the next turn, and he was able to charge through my troops, only stopping when they reached Dalamir. Now at this point I had an ingenious idea. I looked at the scenario and realised that there was only 1 victory point available for killing the leader. So keeping Dalamir alive wasn't really that beneficial for me, especially when he'd already lost a wound and some fate, and he only has 2 might points. So instead of charging any more models into combat with the chariot, they all stood around it, and I threw 18 thrown daggers at it. It's also worth noting that if I did accidentally kill Dalamir with any throwing weapons thrown into the combat, I would actually deny my opponent the VP because he didn't kill him. Also, the second chariot arrived on the table, my burger and chips. Rolling them 6 at a time, I threw all 18 daggers into the chariot. I killed one of my own troops, which I was not worried about at all. These guys are expendable. Dalamir survived somehow, which was ridiculous, and I managed to take the chariot down to 2 wounds. This was looking good. And in the preceding fight phase, Dalamir did die, which I wasn't too upset about because it was part of the big plan. In the next phase, I won priority and again charged the chariot. In hindsight, this was not a great idea because at one combat, because Dwalin's fight value is much higher than mine, and it chopped a lot of my troops, so I was going to have to rethink my plan. Kame then won priority, which I couldn't turn around, and he mowed through a bunch more of my troops, which was really starting to make me not quite panic, but I was getting there. This could turn around pretty quickly if I lost many more. And then came the shooting phase, which was really my time to shine. I threw every dagger I had at that chariot, as well as 8 crossbow bolts. I destroyed the chariot, all of the dwarves came tumbling out, and I even had enough ammunition left over to kill Keeley. Now, the added bonus of the 3 remaining dwarves being knocked prone by falling out of the chariot meant that I would get my army bonus of +1 to wound if I got into combat with them before they stood up. So I had to win this priority, charge them, surround them, and take that +1 to wound. This was the only chance I would get to wound some of these high defense dwarfs. Sadly, there was nothing the dwarves could do to stem the piratical tide. First Keeley and then Balin fell, leaving Dwalin the lone survivor. Soon after, the game ended and I achieved an 8-2 victory. A great game, and I really look forward to playing against or with the chariot again. It's also worth noting that the final wound on Balin was delivered using one of Cammy's teammates' dice. That's going to cause some fights. On to the final game of the day, game 4, and the scenario was Fog of War, my absolutely favourite scenario in MESBG. It's got a little bit of everything. You have to pick an enemy hero, not the leader, to kill. You have to pick one of your heroes, not the leader, to protect, and you have to pick a terrain piece on the enemy's half of the table, and you have to get your units onto that to, take it like you're stealing a building or something like that. So great scenario, I love it. It's got, like I said, a little bit of everything, and it's the one that I infamously played twice at a tournament. I was playing against Joshua and his Passing of the Grey Company Legendary Legion, led by Aragorn with Elrond's twins, Elrohan and Elrohir, the twins, Legolas and Gimli. So another low model count army for me to outnumber with my 43 models. Before we get into the final match, I want to take a bit of time to thank my Patreons for the continued support of the channel. I know it's a bit of a meme to say I couldn't do this without yous, but you guys certainly make it a lot easier for me to sit down and make videos. Not just financially, but knowing that there are people out there that support me and want me to make videos and stuff. So yeah, thank you guys really from the bottom of my heart, especially this close to Christmas when every penny's a prisoner. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Now, in order to bring you guys into the feeling of being in the game of Fog of War, I'm not going to tell you which hero I chose to kill, protect, or which terrain piece I chose to capture. I want you guys to watch this, just like you're playing it, not knowing what's going to happen until the end of the game. Now, Josh strategically positioned his warband behind the bridge to give him some cover, whereas I placed my warbands led by Dalamir and Delgamar right in the middle of the board, and my bosun on the far right hand corner. My idea was that I would let him come to me. He had significantly less models than me, and I had a lot of shooting. I was hoping that I could maybe put a few wounds or knock a few fate points off before he got to me, and then surround them. Whilst I was doing that with my 2 main warbands, the bosun would sneak into his half of the table and claim a terrain piece. By the time we got to melee range, I had lost a couple of units to Legolas' shooting, but I was still greatly outnumbering him with a lot of shots and daggers of my own yet to throw or shoot. By the time that Aragorn and the twins crashed into my battle line, I'd already snuck a wound and a point of might out of Aragorn, and he would quickly be surrounded by my overwhelming numbers. In the shooting phase, I threw 7 flowing daggers at Legolas and was able to put a wound on him, which Josh chose not to use a fate point to attempt to save. With the higher fight value, all Aragorn had to do was roll a 6 and my overwhelming numbers would mean nothing, and he did. However, even with the help of Anduril, he couldn't kill Dalamir. At the beginning of the next turn, Josh won priority and I was unable to take it off him because I just didn't have the might available at the middle of the board where all of his models were. He charged Aragorn into Dalamir and charged the twins, Legolas and Gimli, into the rest of my troops. It was looking like it was going to be a serious fight. Now Legolas had only charged one of my Corsairs and I was happy with that, so I let a number stand back, and in the shooting phase they all threw their throwing daggers into the combat. One of them went through, went into Legolas and wounded him. Josh then had to spend both of his fate points to keep Legolas alive. Now Aragorn was actually in combat with both of my big heroes, Dalamir and Delgamar. Unfortunately, Dalamir was the only hero in my army list with strike and he was out of might, so I couldn't strike to potentially beat Aragorn in fight value, meaning that it would all be up to actual rolls of the dice. Aragorn rolled a 3 high, and only having 2 points of might left he couldn't take up to 6 to win, meaning that with all of my dice all I needed to do was roll a single 6 and the battle was mine. Miraculously, even with all the dice I had available, the best I could roll was a 5. Luckily however, it was with Delgamar who had might to spare, so he turned that 5 into a 6 and I automatically won the fight. Between the superior numbers, the +1 to wound against trapped models, and a last minute reminder that Dalamir had Bane of Kings, I was able to kill Aragorn and I could breathe a sigh of relief as I took one of the most dangerous models in the game off the board. Across the rest of the fights, both of the twins won their combats, although one of them had to spend 2 might points to win, otherwise he's going to be trapped. That +1 to wound really forcing Josh's hand to spend might to win these fights. Gimli lost his fight but was unwounded because at defense 8 he required me to roll a 6 and a 4 in order to put a wound on him. And then to wrap out the round, Legolas won his fight on a 3 high and was able to kill the model he was fighting against. At the start of the next turn, Josh called a heroic move with Legolas to take the priority away from me and pulled him just out of sight of the camera into a small building, into the doorway for a little bit of added protection. Now this had me slightly worried that this might be the terrain piece that Josh was aiming for. As Legolas took refuge in the doorway, I threw 3 throwing daggers at him and rolled 3 1s. Not a great start. I then took a shot with a crossbow, I hit him, I wounded him, and Josh rolled his fate. He also rolled a 1, meaning that Legolas was done for the game. With Josh down 2 of his 5 starting models, things were getting a bit hectic, as was the filming of this vlog, helped in part by Scotland's second best MESBG YouTuber. As time was running out and the game was rumbling on, one of the twins and Gimli decided to hide in the building underneath the camera, whilst the other twin made his way to the back right hand corner of the map, where my Corsair and a couple of Reavers had been hiding for the entirety of the match. Somehow, despite my massive outnumbering, I really had to split my attention. I wanted to get some units into that building to trap Gimli and the twin, getting that +1 to wound and hopefully maybe killing one of them and ending this game a bit quicker than I wanted to. However, I also had to split some force off to chase down that other twin to stop him from getting to my Mosin and killing those guys. Going into the final round, I was broken, so I had to start taking courage tests. As a result, a number of my models ran away. We'd got through a couple of these before we realised that we'd actually forgotten to roll to see if the game ends, because the turn following someone being broken, you roll to see if the game ends, and in a 1 or 2, the game is done. I rolled a 2, so we put the models back who had ran away and we started counting up the points. It was time to tally up the points. I would score 3 points for killing Legolas, I would score 0 points for keeping Delgamar alive because I threw him into the middle of combat and he died, and I would take 3 points for capturing my terrain piece in the back right hand corner of my bosun, so 6 points to me. Josh would take 3 points for breaking me and not being broken himself, 1 point for keeping Gimli alive with a wound, and 1 point for taking a terrain piece, but my model in it would deny him the full 3 points, meaning I would earn a very close 6-5 victory. With all 4 games done, it was on to the prizes. First up was the wooden spoon, which went to Cameron, who we played in game 3 with his incredible dwarven chariot. Best painted went to Cammy Law, another friend of the channel and a fantastic painter. Unfortunately, I couldn't submit models this competition because I didn't bring my own army. Most sporting went to Adam, who was attending his first ever MESBG tournament and walked away with 3 wins. And finally, last but not least, the overall winner on the day was Finlay, another great friend of the channel and definitely too young to be handling large sharp objects such as these. Overall, just a fantastic tournament. It was incredibly well ran. Fraser done extremely well for his first ever tournament. It went off without a hitch. For me personally, to come home with 2 wins out of 4 games with an army that I don't own and had never looked at the rules seriously for, yeah, I'll happily take that for my last GBHL tournament of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed the tournament itself. I think that shows. I have one more tournament before the end of the year. It's quite a friendly one, and it's the 30th of January, so there's absolutely no chance of me getting another video out before the end of the year for tournaments anyway. Hoping to make some crafty stuff, and I want to do like a YouTube rewind 2023 in hindsight hobby video. I hope that makes sense. Just looking at everything that's happened over the last year with the hobby, for me personally, everything I've done, and looking forward to 2024. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please like, please subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave a comment telling me how crap I am at this game, whatever, just drives up my engagement, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.